What would you say if a cop looked at you and said, "You look suspicious," right in your face? If you answer the wrong way, you can turn a quick stop into handcuffs, a search, or a charge you never saw coming. But if you say the right line calmly and fast, you can protect yourself without arguing for 1 second. Before I reveal the exact words, hit subscribe right now so you can find this video again when you actually need it. And tap like because this may be the one video that saves your future self. Here's the reality. When an officer says you look suspicious, that phrase can sound small, but it's a trapdoor. It pushes you to talk. It pushes you to explain. It pushes you to fill silence with nervous words that can be twisted later. And once you start talking, you're often helping build the case against yourself. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and the pattern is always the same. The driver or pedestrian tries to act extra nice, talks too much, gives a long story, and suddenly the stop gets longer and worse. In the next few minutes, you're going to learn the exact question that forces the officer to show whether this is a real detention or just fishing. You're going to learn the one sentence that blocks consent searches. You're going to learn the safest way to stop yourself from talking too much. And you're going to see how Supreme Court rulings back all of it in plain English. Now let's talk about why this matters so much for you. Most people hear "you look suspicious" and think they need to defend themselves right away. So they say things like, "What did I do?" or "I'm not doing anything wrong," or the worst one, "Go ahead, I've got nothing to hide." That feels normal, it feels human, but it usually makes your situation worse. Here's the reality. Your goal is not to win an argument on the street. Your goal is to leave safely, quietly, and with your rights still intact. Most people have no idea that police are trained to use calm, open-ended questions to get you talking. They don't need you yelling. They need you volunteering. That is why your words matter so much in the first 30 seconds. If you stay calm and use short, clean lines, you make it much harder for a simple encounter to grow teeth. The first thing you need to do is force the moment into one of two boxes. You either are being detained, which means you are not free to leave for now, or you are not being detained, which means the encounter is supposed to be voluntary. So here's your first line. You look at the officer and say this: "Officer, am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Those exact words. Memorize them. Let me show you exactly why this works. That question does 3 big things for you. First, it stops you from blurting out random facts. Second, it makes the officer choose a lane. Third, it creates a clean record of what kind of encounter this is. If the officer says you are free to leave, your next move is simple. You leave. You do not stay and chat. You do not try to clear things up. You leave. If the officer says you are detained, now the officer is claiming legal authority to hold you. That does not mean the stop is valid. It means the officer is saying this is no longer a casual conversation. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. In Terry v. Ohio, the court said police can briefly stop someone if they have reasonable suspicion, which is just a simple way of saying specific facts that point to possible crime, not just a gut feeling. In Florida v. Royer, the court made clear that if an encounter is truly voluntary, you should be free to walk away. That is why your question matters so much. It exposes whether this is a real stop or just pressure. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Why are you harassing me? I didn't do anything." Then the encounter gets tense, emotional, and longer. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Then the officer has to define the stop and you avoid feeding the situation. Watch what happens when you use that line the right way. If the officer was fishing, your question often ends the fishing. If the officer was trying to get you to volunteer details, your question blocks that path. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it changes the encounter from emotional to procedural. That is exactly where you want it. Calm, clean, short. Now one warning for you. Do not say this line with attitude. Do not smirk. Do not step toward the officer. Do not talk over them. Your power comes from being calm, not clever. You are not trying to embarrass the officer. You are trying to protect yourself. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it helps show whether you were really free to go or not. If you remember only one sentence from this whole video, make it that one. Have you ever been asked something vague like this by police during a stop? Drop a comment below and tell me how you handled it. Now let's move to the second tactic, because even if you are detained, there is another huge mistake you must avoid. The officer may say you look nervous, they may say your story sounds off, they may ask if you have anything illegal. Then comes the soft voice question that ruins people every day. "You don't mind if I take a quick look, right?" This is where people hand away their rights with one scared sentence. Here's exactly what you say. "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Word for word. Memorize that line. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. Police do not always need your consent to search. But if they do have some legal reason later, your refusal still matters because you did not make it easier for them. And if they do not have legal grounds, your refusal can be the difference between a search happening lawfully or unlawfully. Either way, you never help them by saying yes. Let me show you exactly how people mess this up. They try to sound innocent. They say, "Sure, I've got nothing to hide." That feels harmless. But that one sentence can destroy a later challenge to the search. If you gave consent, the court may say you allowed it. That is why your line must be direct and simple. Not rude, not long, just clear. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Yeah, go ahead, I don't care." Then the search starts, and they lose a major legal protection. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Then they preserve their rights and stop the officer from claiming easy permission. This is 100% legal. You are allowed to refuse consent. Refusing consent does not make you guilty. Refusing consent does not mean you are fighting. It means you are using your rights. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection in many street encounters because consent is one of the easiest ways people open the door themselves. Now I need you to hear this clearly. Your refusal may not stop the search in that moment. If the officer claims they have another reason, they may search anyway. Do not physically block them. Do not pull away. Do not reach into your pockets or car. You simply repeat your line one time if needed. "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Then you stay still. Later, your lawyer can fight the legality of what happened. But your job in the moment is not to win the case on the sidewalk. Your job is to avoid making it worse. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings too. In Schneckloth versus Bustamante, the court dealt with consent searches and made clear that consent can open the door in a huge way. In plain English, if you freely say yes, the search often becomes much harder to challenge. That is why your no matters. It protects you from handing over your rights by accident. Watch what happens when you stay calm and refuse the search the right way. The officer loses the easy path. The conversation tightens up. The record gets cleaner, and your future defense gets stronger. That is a big win for you, even if it does not feel dramatic in the moment. The third tactic is the one that saves you from yourself. Because after the officer hears your first two lines, they often switch tactics. They stop asking big legal questions. They start asking small, casual ones. Where are you coming from? Why are you in this area? Why are you so nervous? Whose car is this? These sound harmless. They are not harmless. They are evidence fishing. So here's the third line you need. You say this: "I choose to remain silent." Short, calm, clean. Listen closely, because this is critical. Silence does not help you unless you actually say you are using it. If you just stand there awkwardly, some courts may treat that differently than clearly invoking your right. That is why your words matter. You do not need a speech. You do not need a debate. You just need that sentence. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I'm just being honest, officer," and then start explaining everything. Then small details stop matching, and the officer says the story changed. Good way. Smart drivers say, "I choose to remain silent." Then the officer gets less free information, and you stop digging your own hole. This is 100% legal. You are not required to solve the officer's mystery for them. You are not required to guess what answer sounds safe. And you are definitely not required to talk your way out of a vague accusation like "you look suspicious." In fact, that is where people get burned the most. They think talking will clear things up, but nervous talking usually creates new problems. Now let me give you the plain English legal backup. The Fifth Amendment protects your right not to incriminate yourself, which means not helping build a case against yourself with your own words. Miranda v. Arizona is the famous case people know, but the deeper lesson for you is simple. Your words can be used against you, so you should stop giving them away for free. Salinas v. Texas is also important because it shows that just going silent without clearly saying you are invoking your right can get messy. So say the line out loud: "I choose to remain silent." There is one practical point for you here. In some states, during a lawful stop, you may have to identify yourself. Hebel v. 6th Judicial District says states can require your name during a valid stop under some state laws. So do not confuse basic identification with full conversation. If the law requires your name, give your name. Then stop talking. That is how you stay smart. 90% of viewers don't know what's coming next. Stay with me because this next tactic is where a lot of shaky stops fall apart. The fourth tactic is what you say when the officer keeps pushing after the purpose of the stop should be over. Maybe it started with a traffic issue, maybe it started with a vague street encounter. But once the basic reason for the stop is done, police often try to stretch the moment. They ask one more question, then one more. Then they try for a dog sniff, backup unit, or consent search. Your fourth line helps cut that off. Here's exactly what you say: "Officer, is there anything else, or am I free to go?" That line is gold for you. Why does it work? Because it politely forces the clock into the open. It reminds everyone that stops are not supposed to last forever. If the officer has done the traffic part, run your information, and handed back your documents, There has to be a legal reason to keep you longer. Without that, the stop should end. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Sure, I can wait," or "Ask me whatever you need." Then the stop drags on. A new investigation starts. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, is there anything else, or am I free to go?" Then the officer must either end the stop or justify extending it. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings again. In Rodriguez v. United States, the court said police cannot drag out a traffic stop longer than needed just to investigate something else unless they have real additional suspicion. In plain English, they cannot turn a simple stop into a fishing trip just because they feel like it. That is huge for you. It means time matters. It means silence matters. And it means your question matters. Brown v. Texas also helps your mindset here. The court said police cannot just demand identification from someone without proper legal grounds. In plain English, officers need more than a hunch. They need specific reasons tied to possible crime. That matters when you hear vague phrases like, "You look suspicious." Suspicious is not magic. It is not a free pass. It still has to connect to facts. Here's the reality. A lot of police encounters survive because regular people do the officer's work for them. They explain, they agree, they wait, they consent, they volunteer. Your job is to stop doing that. Short lines, calm voice, no argument. Now let's put the legal framework together in simple English so you can remember it under stress. Terry v. Ohio says police can briefly stop you if they can point to real facts that suggest crime may be happening. That means more than, "You look weird to me." Florida v. Royer says if the encounter is truly voluntary, you should be free to leave. That is why your first question matters so much. Rodriguez v. United States says a traffic stop cannot be stretched longer than needed without more legal reason. That is why your fourth question works. Hebel says that in some states, during a valid stop, you may have to give your name, but not your whole life story. Put all that together and the lesson for you is simple. Ask if you are detained, refuse consent to searches, invoke silence. Ask if you are free to go. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings and it fits together like a lock. Now let's walk through a real scenario so you can hear how this sounds in your own life. You are driving home at night. Your hands are on the wheel. The officer walks up and says your turn looked odd and then adds, "You seem nervous. You look suspicious. Where are you coming from?" Most drivers panic here. They laugh too much. They say, "Nowhere. I mean my friend's house. I mean just around." The officer hears a shaky answer and leans in harder. Then comes, "Mind if I look in the car?" The driver says, "Sure, I guess." 10 minutes later, bags are out, seats are checked, and the whole stop is a mess. Now watch the right way. The officer says, "You look suspicious." You stay calm and say, "Officer, am I being detained or am I free to leave?" If the officer says detained, you hand over what the law requires, like license and registration if you are driving. Then when the officer starts asking side questions, you say, "I choose to remain silent." If they ask to search, you say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." If they keep lingering after the traffic part should be done, you say, "Officer, is there anything else or am I free to go?" That is it. No speech, no anger, no fake friendliness, just clear, repeatable lines. And notice the difference in outcome for you. In the wrong version, you gave the officer extra facts, extra time, and extra permission. In the right version, you gave the officer almost nothing to work with except what the law already allowed. That does not guarantee you an easy night. Nothing does. But it gives you the best chance to leave safely and protect your case later if things go bad. That is the whole game. Next week, I'm dropping the video on what to say when cops claim they smell weed. Subscribe right now because that one gets people searched every single day, and you need those lines too. So let's lock this in before you forget it. First, when you hear "you look suspicious," do not argue. Ask, "Officer, am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Second, if they want to search, say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Third, when questions start piling up, say, "I choose to remain silent." Fourth, if the stop should be ending, ask, "Officer, is there anything else or am I free to go?" Those 4 lines keep you calm, protect your rights, and stop you from talking yourself into trouble. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court, and your future self will thank you for memorizing them now. Hit subscribe so you catch next week's video on smell-based searches. Smash that like button if this script just changed how you'll handle a stop. And drop a comment telling me which line you're going to memorize first. Stay safe out there.